Hi, my name is Brendan Grondin, and this will be my presentation for the two themes outline. Now, the first theme I chose is the laments. Lamenting is a huge part of the Old Testament. We see David lament in the book of Psalms. We even have a whole book on lamenting called Lamentations, where the definition of lament is an expression of loss, sometimes throughout artistic expression. David does it in the form of poetry or songs. The book of Lamentations does it in their writing. And on a whole, Lamentations expresses the confusion and suffering felt after the destruction of Jerusalem by Babylon. So the Jews here are incredibly distressed. They're incredibly sad. They don't know which way is up, which way is down. They don't know why God has forsaken them, because as we've discussed in previous classroom settings, that God promised Abraham that they would be a great nation and that this would be their land. However, they decided to choose their own path. They decided to do their own thing. So therefore, God removed them from their land. And that was a very confusing time. And that's when they pleaded their heart out to God and they lamented in that case. Now, why is lamenting so important in the Old Testament? Right, he kind of talks about it, that there's this shift from the misery and the pain of the lament to some expression of hope, trust, and expected deliverance and renewed praise. This was a way of people reaching out to God and being true to God. We see this a few times within the book of Psalms where David or whoever the writer is just crying out to God either before, during, or after a war, during hard times, being like, God, why have you forsaken us? Why have you done this? And then there's a pause. There's a moment where the writing stops. And it goes into this whole new section where they are praising God. They are going, God, we thank you so much. We love you and all that you do. It's really a great thing to see. Now, I read this article by a guy named Gwennon, and he was talking about a specific part in Chronicles where it says, we are powerless before the vast multitude that comes against us. We are at a loss of what to do. Hence our eyes turn to you. This is a form of lament because he is breaking down and saying, we are at a loss. This is our prayer of pain. This is how we reach out to you. Gwennon also compares that a similar feeling throughout this time where the book of Lamentations was written, and while they're in exile to the Babylonians, is that it was kind of like our present day 9/11 situation, and how many of us would have gone out and cried out to God. Some people who don't believe in God found other ways of lamenting, not towards God and not in this biblical way of this redemption, but that is a very good analogy for us to compare to. Now, my second theme was kingship. This one really spoke out to me because knowing that we have a king, knowing that we're not alone in this world, knowing that things will be better it's a great feeling. It's a great thing to know and be aware of. Now, I read this other article by a guy named Power, and he said Yahweh is undoubtedly the mightiest and most majestic king in the Hebrew Bible. He sits above the fearsome cherubim, which often flank the thrones of the ancient Near East kings in drawings and carvings. Often in the Bible, Yahweh is found presiding over a council of divine beings or royal court in heaven. So this shows that God, when he promised Abraham back then that he would make them into a great nation, that he wouldn't leave them by themselves. He would continue to be with them. And we see that in times when God tells Saul, or God uses Samuel to say, like, wait 3 days and then I will come to you. And he would have his kings wait before battle and to hear messages from God. God was with his people throughout the prophets in their exile, where he would reach out to them and tell them how they feel. He was with them in Hosea, and he would tell them that you are like a prostitute. And he had Hosea marry a prostitute, and then Hosea would go get the prostitute. You are like a prostitute, and you belong to me, but you keep turning away from me. And then Power goes on to say later in literature, Isaiah specifically and Zechariah talk about the Messiah, the coming of Jesus, and how he will be a new king. And in uh, in Jewish culture, they actually started using the word Messiah as the future royal figure, who would carry out the functions of an ideal ancient Near Eastern monarch. So they really felt like this Messiah was going to be their new king. It wasn't the way they expected, but he was their new king. And um, the reason that this is so important to the Old Testament is that even in Isaiah, towards the end of Isaiah, he looks to a better, brighter future with his people, knowing that God will be the sovereign king, knowing that God will rule over them in a new heaven and new earth. And yes, they are experiencing exile to the Babylonians, but we are essentially in exile from God because of our sin through Adam. And knowing that this Messiah will be our king is redemptive, and knowing that he will be there for us and that he's walking with us into his new kingdom is the hope that we need in this world. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Bye.